Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Kuf Yud Zion, Kuf Tes Zion rather, in Rav Mציעא. As we learn for Achenukol basis Ram Shum Baser Shivya and Shavua Tov L'Kulam. We're at the about 15 lines down on the page on Kuf Tes Zion. The last word on the line is Hahu Gabra. A certain man, tell a story. The Fabel Sakina the Ashchapta Michabrei. Here we're talking about taking a collateral from a person after he couldn't pay back his loan on time. So he took his collateral, a butcher's knife. So Reuben took a butcher's knife from Shimon. Reuben, let's say, lent money to Shimon. Shimon didn't pay it back. He took a butcher's knife. Also came to Abaye. So Shimon came to Abaye. Amarle Abaye said, Zil lahadbe, give him back the knife. Can't take it. So here, apparently, it's not just that, you're not allowed to go into his house to take it, that you're not allowed to do anyway. Either he took it here, Ayidei Bezdin. Bezdin maybe did it the right way, however they did it, either by standing outside or by going in, or maybe he took it, Shaloka did. But in either case, he had this item, and the problem was, it's an item that's used for food preparation. As we learn, the pasuk says that you can't take anything. Not only can't you take an item that if you take an item that the poor man needs at day, at night, you give it back to him according to when he needs it. But when it comes to food preparation, like a mill, you don't take that at all. We had a shiloh yesterday about it. That if you take a whole mill, the upper part and the lower part, you over 2, you over 3. But any item of food preparation, you're not allowed to take. Give it right back. The Takum Bedina. If you claim that he owes you money, you have to give him back his collateral number 1. You can't hold it against payment, but you have to give it back. But Takum Bedina. Now get up, Allah, and then come to court. Tell him if you claim he owes you the money. Rashi says either he'll be moda, or if there's Adam, he'll have to pay. And if not, you have to make a shvuas esses and claim that he owes you the money. But you cannot use this illegally gotten collateral and hold it against him for payment. Rabbi disagrees. Rav Amar no. Lo tzarich l'mekem habedina. You don't have to go up to court against him at all and fight. You can claim ad k'nei demeim. Why? You could say, listen, maybe I bought it. Rabbi, take a look at Rashi in the second of the wide lines in Rashi. Rav Amar, given the mashkene, since he took it as a mashkene, but ain't Adam shemashkene, and there's no Adam that he took it. So apparently it wasn't done with Bezdin. He took it, let's say illegally, but he took it. But since he took it, he can claim he can claim I bought it. Why do I have to give it back? Claim I bought it. The Konale Mashkin, so he took it as a Mashkin. He can make a shvuas esses and say, listen, if I want to, I could have claimed that I bought it. So the Konale Mashkin, so therefore the Mashkin, he has like a migu. I don't have to give it back. In other words, if the loan was $100 and let's say the butcher's knife that he took was $75, so up to $75 he can make a claim without holding on to this and say, look, at $75 I'm entitled to because I could have claimed that I bought this thing from you. It belongs to me. I don't even have to fight about that. The rest of it, or if let's say it's worth the same $100, then I could until what it's worth, he can claim that it's his. It's interesting the way Rashi says lish baleim, because why would he have to swear? He could just say it's mine. He has a migu. He could have said this, but he's not really saying that he bought it. But since he could have said that, like even the mashke, he could have claimed I bought it. So therefore, because he has a migu, he doesn't have to go to court again for the whole thing. He just has to, if there's a difference between the amount of the mashkan and the loan is worth more, on that he would have to make a regular shvuas esses and go to court. But if the item is worth as much as the loan, he wouldn't have to go to court on that. He could just say, listen, I make him bedina uluya the korle mashkan lish bavelito like dama. You can swear until to what's worth. And mashma, he wouldn't do it in court. There's normally a shvua like a shvuas esses or a shvuas manamiksi. You have to go in court. Here he's saying you don't have to fight in court about that, like start from scratch. If you're making a shvua, you have to make a shvua in court. If you don't make a shvua in court, what's the shvua's worth? If nobody saw you make it, just you and the Baldin, what's the point over there? So the shvuah must be in court, but still, the point is that in court he wouldn't have to make a claim against the whole thing, because about the part that he is part that he has a mashkon against, or he has a migu about that. So that's what I'm saying, that he doesn't have to go to court like a Medina, the Karle Mashkon. Lishba Velita Kedevam. That Lishba is a little bit schwer to me in Rashi, because what do you mean to swear? The whole idea is that Abaye said you got to go to court and swear that he owes you the money, right? If you obviously we're speaking where there's no written IOU and there's no Adam, etc. So if not, Lishba Shvuas he has to swear Shvuas to collect the money, okay? Because you have no claim. But if you have the migu, so what do you have to make a shvur for? And I'm not sure what Rashi means over here. That even the mashke, the eight Adam shemishka, he could have swore, he could have said, I have a migu. I could have said I bought it, and therefore, believe me when I say you owe me the money. That's normally what a migu is. Because the mashkan he acquired, so to speak, lishba or lishava velito like kedei dama. It's not. I'm not sure what the lishava over here is, because if he has to swear, he had to swear before also with the shvuas hesses, whether you claim it or not. In other words, what is Rava's whole point is that since he has the mashkon, he shouldn't have to swear he has a migu. So what does he mean by lishba? I'm not sure what Rashi means over there. All right, so we have machlokas here between Abaye and Rav. Abaye came before Abaye. Abaye said, give it back. Because it's ochel nefesh, the Torah says you can't take ochel nefesh, you got to give it back. Then go to court with him. Rava says, no, since he has he will have to give it back, but lo tzarich make him bedina, not kedei demand. In other words, apparently he has to give it back, but he can claim that as far as since he has the mashkon, he has to give it back, and he was over on taking it. But since he has it, he has a migu, and he doesn't have to swear against the whole thing. But doesn't Abaye hold to that idea that if you have a mashkon, at least the part of the mashkon, you're believed on that. How is this different than a case? There was a case where some goats belonging to Reuben, let's say, ate they ate Shimon's peeled barley. The owner of the barley came, that Shimon, the toughest slew, and he seized the goats. The Katan Shubin who's asking for a lot of money. He says, look, they ate up thousands of dollars worth of barley, and I'm going to keep the goats until you pay me. Amravu to Shmuel, Shmuel's father, Paskin, Yochalitnat Kirei demand. Yeah, he can make a claim until the value of the goats. In other words, he says, listen, you either pay me or I'm going to take the goats. So you see over here that Rav Svara holds that Shmuel's father Paskin, that if you have the collateral, you can make that claim until their value, because otherwise you could have said, I bought them. Kumar says, no, the goats are not something that's normally lent out or rented. People don't do that. So it's a good claim. I could have said I bought them. What am I doing with these goats? I probably bought them. I could have said I bought them. So therefore, you're believed to say, since I could have said I bought them, you're believed to say he ate $2,000 worth of barley. But over here, this item over here, this butcher's knife, is something that normally is lent out or hired out. And therefore, on a claim like that, something that's normally, you can't say, oh, I could have said I bought it, because it's obviously something that people rent out or borrow. So it's not such a good claim to say, I could have said I bought it. If you have somebody's goats they don't usually rent out or lend out. So there it's a good claim. I could have said I bought it. Here it's not such a good claim. The Shalch Rafuna Baravin, Dor Masui, he claimed this exactly in this halacha. Dor Masui Lahashlas, things that are normally lent out or hired out, people rent. And you say, well, I bought it. Guy could always say, listen, oh, you think I rented this car? I bought it. Car's mine. I got the keys. Must be mine, right? So no, but something is normally rented out or lent out, you can't make such a claim. So this therefore it's different over here. Abaye says this is different because this item of Bush's knife simply is lent out or rented out. The rubber as far as doesn't rub. Rubber claims that you could hold the knife against payment from Shimon, from the Lova, doesn't go as far. Rava himself, he himself retained or made these people play. In other words, he made them cough up these children. In Mezuga de Sarvla, a pair of wool scissors that cut wool and cloth. The Safra Agadata in a book of Agadata. Miasmi, he claimed it from Yisomim. Somebody had said that they lent that to the father, to the Yisomim, and to the father of Yisomim who died, and some claim they don't know. And something that's normally lent out or borrowed out or hired out. And he said you can't claim that we bought them, and therefore it was a good claim. They took it away from them. Rashi says, the owner gave Adam Shehin Shalahen. They lent it from Shalelu. You can't say if you could have claimed the so we would have claimed it for the Yisomim. And as if Yisomim can't claim themselves, their children, they don't know, we would have claimed it for them. But he says we took it from them anyway, because it's something which is normally rent out. You can't say, oh, I bought it. So you see, Rava also himself says that you can't always claim that you bought it. Rava, Hainami, Kivan the pogma, since its value gets depreciated, kapti inshi below mushli. So Rava says the same thing over here, that people don't normally rent that out. In other words, the item we're talking about, the butcher's knife, a good butcher or a shochet is very careful with his knife. So since it's something that loses value, he doesn't normally lend it out or hire it out or rent it out. And therefore, it's also something, therefore, you could have made a claim. The issue is goats, people don't rent out or lend. So there you have a claim. He could have said he bought it, right? But something where you do remove it, like let's say woolen scissors for wool or a sefer of agadata, it's something which is normally lent out or borrowed out. There they have a good claim. They had a good claim. He had Adam that the claimant says, I lent it to the father of these children, and then the father died, and it's in the children's reshus right now. They took it away from him because there's Adam that he owned it, and they can't make a claim. The children, or on behalf of the children, you can't claim. Well, maybe we could have said we bought it because that's something which is normally rented out or lent out. So you can't make a claim there. The issue over here is the butcher's knife. So Rava would say butcher's knife is also not normally rented out, and therefore, when you took the butcher's knife, you could make a claim, hold the butcher's knife against payment from the loba. All right. Now we start the last parak, the 10th parak of Mציעא, which is really the 20th parak of Nezikin. If you count Bava Kama, Mציעא, Basra, each of them have 10 parakim altogether. It's called Masechet Nezikin, which is so therefore there's 30 parakim, and this is the 20th parak. It's called Nezikin, as we said the other day. Rashi quoted on the days the other day, right, on Kuf Yudalad that Nezikin is also called Yeshuos, right? Yeshuos Chachma V'das is also called Yeshuos. All right, Habayis V'Aliyah Shoshnayim. This is similar to what you have in Israel, where people own their own apartment. Now, in America was customary, or other places where the apartments are rented out. So here, let's say, you can have both cases. In this case, Habayis V'Aliyah Shoshnayim. There was a house, the lower story and the upper story were owned by two different people. Shenaflu, the whole thing fell down. The whole thing fell down. There was an earthquake or whatever, or we don't know. The whole thing fell down. Now you've got a pile of rubble, rocks, stones, earth, maybe some wood, whatever was there. The whole thing is a big pile of rubble. They both split it, assuming the apartments were the same size. Let's say one apartment was 20 feet tall and one was only 10 feet tall. So it's 2/3 to 1/3. And it's proportional to what their measurements of the apartments were. They split it. Now, the whole thing is one big pile of rubble. You don't know what stones go to what. Split everything. Let's assume that they're both the same size apartments. You split it down the middle. Then the Mishnah says, then you say, well, the Gemara is going to explain this is a different case. And then you see which rocks are more likely to break. Okay, what do we mean by that? This is really like a second case. It sounds like it's the same. It says Veroin, like you check which rocks. What do we mean by that? The Gemara is going to explain. It depends on how it fell. In other words, if you just come down in the morning and you see one big pile of rubble, the whole house fell down, right? There was an earthquake or something hit it. You can't tell whose rocks belong to whom. So you just split it down the middle. However, if you could tell which ones are more likely to break, how do we mean by that? Gemara is going to explain that if it collapsed in one spot, then the lower bricks are the lower rocks or bricks are the ones that collapsed first, they broke, and the other ones fell on top of them. So the upper rocks belong to the upper guy. However, if it was thrown far away, that means that how did the house fall down? because it was struck by something, a blow, a big cannonball came and smashed it, or a rocket came and smashed the whole thing, then the upper rocks would have gone further away, right? If somebody took a big sledgehammer to the whole place and knocked it over, so the upper rocks, the ones near the roof, they would have been strewn further away. So those would belong to the upper guy, the other ones would belong to the lower guy. So that's what you mean over here. Which ones are likely to break? If there are some rocks which are intact and some which are broken, and you could tell if it collapsed, it just collapsed this way, collapsed on top of one another, then the lower ones are the ones that are broken. If the house collapsed via a shock or a blow, then the ones that are further away are the broken ones. So let's say one of them recognized his stones. They have these houses that are old that are for what do they call it?
The stones are numbered.
The stones are numbered. Exactly. The stones are numbered on these old houses that are made. What's it for historical value? You're supposed to, you're not allowed to mess with them. And if they take them apart, they have to number them. If the stones are numbered and he recognizes his stones, so no, he can take those. Those are his. But and they count against his amount. Let's say it's again 50-50. So meaning is, we'll see, the Gemara is going to say that the other guy can also take whole stones. Can they get that? The Gemara is going to talk about that. We'll see. Now, for the first part of the mission is like Rowan, since it says you check which rocks are likely to break, you could tell. That means you could tell if it fell via pressure, in other words, via the weight, the house just fell from weight or whatever, just it fell via it just couldn't handle the weight. So the upper ones fell, so to speak, on top of the lower ones. That means that the lower ones were more likely ones that were broken, and the upper ones are the ones that are more likely intact. So if you could tell if it fell via pressure, or it fell via a blow or a shock, that means that you know that the ones that are broken are the ones that are further away, that the house like tipped over. If you could tell, why do you say at the beginning of the Mishnah, you split it equally? Let's look. If it fell via a blow, then but then the upper ones would have broken because they're the ones who were strewn further away. If it fell via pressure, then decisive, but then the lower one are the ones that are broken. In other words, that everybody should get their own rocks back. It doesn't. We're not talking about a case like that. What happened was here in the beginning of the Mishnah. In other words, there's two separate cases. The beginning of the Mishnah is speaking about where it fell at night. So okay. So what if it fell at night? So let's look in the morning. Are the rocks strewn far away? If they're strewn far away, you could tell that the ones that are nearby are from the lower one, and the ones that are further away and likely broken would be the upper one. The paninu, they were already moved. In other words, the garbage men came and moved them. So let's say man paninu. So why don't we see who moved them? L'shala, and ask him. The paninu ben Shesarab, like the public works people in Shesarab moved the rocks because it was bothering them. Ba'azlam, and they've left. In other words, there's nobody here to ask. If you could tell how they felt, then you could determine which rocks belong to whom, which rocks and wood, etc. But over here, you can't tell. So let's say let's see in whose rishus are they? Where they fell, let's say, whose rishus are they? Who owns the area in which they fell? If it's one of the two, so whoever fell into his rishus, he is the muhsik, and the other one should be the other one should have to prove and as the first guy, the guy whose rishus the rocks are right now, should be able to say these are mine. If you have a claim, prove your claim. So let's read it. It fell in the chutzner, belonged to both of them. Both of them own the chutzner together. Therefore, it's not Muslim Mechaber. They're both Muhsik. Inami, Rishus Rabim, fell down into Rishus Rabim, so nobody's in Muhsik. B'Boisema, Shutfin, B'Chihai Gavna, Lo Kapi Adar. Or you could say, listen, since they are effectively Shutfin, well, really one owns one, the lower one owns one, the upper one owns the other one. But even if it's a chutzner that belongs to both of them, in other words, even if it fell into the rishus of one of them, but since they're shutfin in general on this building to some degree, right? What do they call that? It's a building of shutfin, that they're shutfin in some parts of the building. Pardon? Like a co-op or whatever, but there's So whatever it is, I was looking for the Hebrew word, the common Hebrew word for a regular apartment building here in Israel. And there's a standard, procedure. There's a protocol for what it's called and the rules, etc. Like that. Anyway, since it's shutfin b'chiyai, they're not makbid of one another. In other words, even if it fell into the shus of one of them, but since they are shutfin with one another in the building or in some other area, they're not makbid. In other words, he's mafrid. Each one says you can use my area and I could use your area. So therefore, it's not considered Moshe Mechabel of Haraya. So that's the first case. The first case is where you came in the morning and you found a pile of rubble. You found a pile of rubble. So that doesn't mean that it just collapsed on itself and it wasn't hit by a blow. Can't tell. Maybe the rocks were all moved overnight. They fell at night and the people came and they moved them and you can't tell. Therefore, you just split it down the middle. However, if you could tell how they fell from the way they weren't moved by anybody. It was either collapsed or it was hit by a rocket or a cannonball or something, and the whole thing was thrown far away. Then you could tell which rocks belonged to him. To him. Let's say one of them recognized his rocks. He had bricks or whatever, and he could tell his own. So so what does the other guy say? In other words, Reuben says, "I know these are my bricks." And what does the other guy say? Either come or ain. If he says, yeah, okay, those are yours, pshita. It says, the end of the Mishnah said, we had really three cases. One is he split it down the middle. The second case is, if you could tell the way it fell, did it fall by collapsing or by a blow, then you could tell the upper one. If it fell by collapsing, then the upper ones are the ones that are intact and the lower ones are broken, more. And if it fell by a blow, then the ones that are broken are the upper guys. If one guy recognized his own rocks, then he takes them. No, and he count against the whole thing. Let's say again they're 50-50 in terms of the total number of rocks or bricks. And if one guy says, well, these 25% are mine, I recognize them, and he gets to keep them and count against the 25%. The other guy takes 25% against that. What does the other guy say? Either come or ain if he agrees, and treat, obviously he takes it. Be low or ain if he doesn't say lamanota, why would he take it? Why would he take it? Why should if he didn't say I agree? So if he doesn't agree, why should the other guy claim just because he says those are his? Maybe they're not his. El Darmale and Yodea. The other guy says, I don't know. You recognize yours, I don't know. So what is this? This is a case of Bari, B'Shema. So it's a kasha of Nachman, the famous case we had a couple of days ago. We had it throughout Shas. Reuben says to Shimon Yomi Hanrals, Shimon says, I don't know. Rafuna reviewed Omer Chayiv. You have to pay. Go ahead, Bari B'Shem, Bari Yadav. Whoever's sure, pay. But Nachman, no. Potter, you're Potter. And we pass in life of Nachman. Potter, why? Because leave the money where it is. Motzem Chavero, all of Araya. Not enough to say Bari B'Shem, Bari Yadav. You don't have to pay because you leave the money where it is. And he's got to swear. He has to swear that he doesn't know. Okay, that's a swear. I wanted to make sure to say he doesn't know. But you don't just say, you have to say Motzem Chavero. He's not allowed to take it. The other guy's got to prove it. So why don't you say if it's a kasha of Nachman? Because over here you're saying one guy says, I know these are my bricks. The other guy says, I don't know. And yet you say you believe the guy who says it's his bricks. So why isn't this a proof against Rav Nachman? Because here you see Bari B'Shema is Bari Yadav. The answer is no. Like we gave this answer a few days ago also. It's speaking about over here where the one who doesn't know is forced to make a shvur d'oraisa. Forced to make a shvur d'oraisa. What is that? What kind of a business of a shvur do you have? Make it Rav Damarava. One of the biyadcha. Man says you owe me. Moving says you owe me $100. But Allah Omer ein l'chaviyadi el l'chamisha. Says you only got 50. I know 50. I know I owe you 50. I motive makes us. I owe you 50. The rest I'm not sure about. He has to swear that he doesn't owe the other 50, but he can't swear because he doesn't know. Since he can't swear, he has to pay. So here also, he's saying, listen, Hachanami Rashi says, keeping the motive mixes, the chayiv shvua d'oraisa b'shum mixes, and since he can't swear, he has to pay. So therefore, Reuben, who claims these 25% of the bricks are mine, Shimon says, I don't know. And Shimon says he's motive some of them, yeah, but the other ones I don't know about. He has to make sure since he can't make shvua, he has to let Reuben keep those 25%. But Olos Lo Min HaCheshbon, the Gemara goes on. That's what the Mishnah said. The last few words of the Mishnah was, and they count against the total. In other words, if let's say each is supposed to get 50% of the entire pile, right? The entire heap of rocks and wood and afar, each gets 50%. But Reuben claims these 25% are mine. So Shimon gets another 25% against that, and then they split the rest of it. So now the Gemara says, when Shimon gets, Reuben claims these 25% are good rocks, these belong to me. I can tell them, they're identified, they're still intact. Well, what does Shimon get? So Shimon gets 25% against that, but broken ones or good ones. Again, when there's a pile of rubble over here, they split everything. If you don't know, you can't prove anything, and nobody can recognize anything. They split everything equally. Whole ones, they split the whole ones equally. The broken ones, the dirt, the wood, everything is split equally. When one guy says, I know these 25% are mine, these good ones, the other guy gets 25% of what? Broken ones and junk or good ones? So Rabbi wanted to say, since he says what? I don't know, he's got a worse claim. In other words, Reuben says, I know these 25% are mine. Shimon says, I don't know. Maybe I mowed it to some, I don't know. So because I don't know, I get nothing. I get junk. Just the opposite. Reuben's got a worse situation. Since he says these 25% are mine, then he means to say, I don't know about the other ones. By saying, I know these I recognize. So the other ones he doesn't recognize. So the other whole ones, the other guy should get. Let's say 50% were good whole rocks. 50% was all the other rubble. So if Reuben says, I know these 25% are mine, but since he only knows these 25%, maybe the other 25% of the whole ones belong to Shimon. So Leslie shouldn't get any more. The other ones should all belong to Shimon. Not only the other 25%, maybe 60% are whole. And Reuben says 25% are mine. These I know. Okay, so you don't know the other ones. So you don't know the other 35%, which comprise a total of 60% of the whole ones. What you say is this: no, it's not fair to say that Shimon should get broken ones against Reuben's 25% of whole ones. Rather, you say that he gets whole ones, just like Shimon, just like Reuben, because you can claim both ways. You claim Shimon is honest and says, I don't know, but that doesn't mean that the other ones belong, that Reuben's got a better claim. Maybe since Reuben only says these 25% of the entire amount, which is 25%, let's say 60% of the whole amount are complete ones. And of those, I know 25% are mine, so the other 35% maybe belong to Shimon. He gets, whether he says, no, the fairest thing to say is Reuben says these 25% are mine, and of the whole ones, and Shimon gets 25% of the whole of the entire amount, or 25%, which are other whole ones, let's say, and the rest they split. So what did Reuben gain? If Shimon is also getting whole ones like Reuben is, right? Of course, it could make a difference if all the whole ones only comprise 25% of the whole thing. But assuming that there's plenty of whole ones and Shimon gets whole ones against that, so what did Reuben gain? What did Reuben gain by recognizing his rocks? If Shimon's also going to get complete rocks, the answer is Lamalban Rafcha. Maybe he's got bigger rocks, wider bricks. Inamitina de Mavda. The way the clay was kneaded, meaning the quality of the rocks, the quality of the bricks. When we say over here rocks, we mean bricks too. So he says maybe because he's got bigger rocks, if recognizing his, the other guy also gets whole ones. But Reuben recognizes these are mine, these are big ones, these belong to me, or because he knows he had better quality ones. That's what Reuben's advantage would be. Now that's all in case where Reuben owned the bottom floor and Shimon owned the top floor, right? And the things fell down. If you could tell which rocks belong to him, that's fine. If you can't tell, you split everything according if they had the same size apartments. And if one of them recognized his, fine, he could take his and the other guy takes against that. What about Vais Aliyah? What about this Mishnah? And we're going to have other Mishnahs about this. If you look at the tomorrow's Daf in Kuf Yud Zayin, you take a look over there at the bottom of the page. There it says Habayis Aliyah Shal Shneim, just like Shal Shneim. Here also, the first Mishnah that we had today, here at the top of this page, is Habayis Aliyah Shal Shneim, where it belonged to two people, meaning Reuben owned one, Shimon owned another one. Now let's go back to a classic case like Yed Chutz La'aretz, where the downstairs was owned. Reuben was the owner of the whole building, and he rented out the upstairs to Shimon. He rented out. Shimon now is a tenant, not an owner. So Habayis Aliyah, you have a house in an upper story, and somebody's renting the upper. Shimon's renting the upper story. Nifchas Aliyah, and the flooring broke out. The flooring broke, and the second floor. The upper story, the floor broke. So Shimon, really, it's going to be hard for him to live there, right? Any Balabais wants to talk, and the Balabais does not want to fix it, right? Common tenant landlord issues. The Baal Bais doesn't want to fix the floor of the second floor, meaning his ceiling and the floor of the upstairs. So the guy in the upper story can come and live downstairs with the landlord. He has a claim to live downstairs. Now we're going to talk specifically depending on the terms of the lease, obviously. What are the terms of the lease? Tomorrow we'll talk about that. But the Mishnah says that according to the terms of the lease, the tenant can come downstairs and live with the landlord until he fixes him. Doesn't mean he can live with him in the same apartment, or he can evict the owner from his apartment. All right, we'll see. Tomorrow's going to talk about this. As you force the owner can be forced to fix the flooring until such time, and until he fixes it, the tenant can claim residency downstairs. Rabbi Yossi Omer, what are the responsibilities of the owner and the tenant? Rabbi Yossi, the tachton, meaning the owner, Reuben, downstairs, he has to basically make the ceiling, the wood, etc. He's got to put the wood in there, the whatever's the planks. He's got to make the ceiling. Elyon Esamaziba. And the other guy, the top guy, he has to plaster it to make it nice and smooth. In other words, the tenant is responsible under normal conditions, unless otherwise stated in the lease. He's supposed to supply the plaster. Okay, so but if the whole thing fell through, there was no ceiling there, that's our issue. How much fell through? So the Gemara says, how much did the whole thing break? And it's impossible even to stand upstairs. Most of it fell. Meaning, the tenant upstairs, he could still access the apartment via the stairs. Let's say there were stairs outside to go up to the apartment. He can access the apartment, but most of inside the apartment fell in. So he can't use, only part of it's usable, part of it he can't. We're going to explain. Shmuel says no, even if 4 tefachim broke through, that's also considered broken. Rav says Baruba, only if most of it fell. If only a small hole fell and 4 by 4 tefachim broke through, look, that's not an excuse to be able to say I want to live downstairs now. What is he going to say? Listen, I lost. That's a small apartment. I lost part of the floor here. I had a table here or a pot or something. I lost that usage. So whatever I lost here, I'm going to come down and use in your apartment. I can use in your apartment. You owe me like 4 by 4 tefachim to use. Okay, so Rav says if most of it broke through, then you can move downstairs. But if only part of it broke, just a small amount, you can live partially upstairs, partially downstairs. Live upstairs, and when you need to use the pot or the table or whatever, you'll come downstairs. Shmuel says no. Ba'arba, even if it's a small hole, like 4 by 4 tefachim, that broke through, also the guy can move downstairs. I can't say, listen, I'll be upstairs for this, I'll sleep upstairs, and I'll eat downstairs. You can't force me to do that. The Gemara says, well, what are the terms of the contract? That's always our issue, right? When the terms are not clear. Even on Amar Aleph, we talk about if you had an IOU, there would be no issue. The whole issue is when he didn't have an IOU and he took a collateral from him. If he said, listen, I'm renting you this upper story, this apartment you're renting out. Also, it's gone. If the apartment's gone, that means it's not usable. I told you we had a case like this where somebody rented an apartment and it flooded. The whole apartment got flooded for whatever reason. The pipes broke or whatever, and you couldn't live in the apartment. So the tenant claimed that the owner has to supply him with an apartment or put him up in a hotel, and the owner put him up in a hotel. Subsequently, when the owner gave him a new lease, he wrote, if the apartment becomes unusable, the lease is terminated, which is what the Gemara says here. I rented you this apartment. The apartment's not usable anymore. That's it. Finish. You don't have to pay the rent, and you get out. There's nothing you could do. El Darmale Aliyah Stam. He says, okay, I'm renting you an apartment. So if that's the case, if the owner has other apartments, let him give him another one. I'm renting you an apartment. And give him another apartment. If this one's not usable, give him another one. That's not what happened. The Omerle Aliyah Zu Shani Maskucha, this apartment that I'm renting to you, Kisalka, when it's usable, when it's up there, right? Salik Bada, go up and live in there. Bechinachas, if it collapses, Bechinachas, Chavas Bada, you come down too. In other words, if the apartment collapses, you can come down and use mine, right? That's what he told them. So Yehochimam, what's the chiddush in that? That lease was very specific. This apartment that I'm renting to you, as long as it's there, this apartment I'm giving to you. He didn't just say I'm renting this apartment. This apartment, this apartment that I'm renting to you. If it's intact, you can use it, and if it's not intact, come downstairs to me. So what's the chiddush in that? He told him this apartment on top of my house, top of this house. That's what he told him. This apartment. So you can't say he's renting him another apartment, right? And you can't say this apartment, just this apartment. He said, Aliyah zu shal gabi bayisani masla. Why did he say I'll buy shal gabi? And just say this one, one floor up. Why did he say I'll buy it? The shibud bayis aliyah, because now the lower story is obligated to the upper story. If he would have just said, I'm renting you this apartment upstairs, I'm renting you that apartment is unusable or is not unlivable, that's it, the deal's off, lease is over. But he said, I'm renting you this apartment on top of my house. So therefore, by saying those extra words on top of my house, he's effectively saying that my house is meshuabad, it's obligated to the apartment. And if somebody has the apartment, you can come and use the house. It's like a similar thing. He had my special story. Reuben said to Shimon, this vine that's hanging over this peach tree, I'm selling you this vine. The nekar parsik, the peach tree was uprooted. Now the peach tree fell, the vine was still there. As long as the vine exists, you have to make him a new peach tree. You have to put him a new peach tree there because he said this vine that is on top of the peach tree, that means that the peach tree was obligated to the vine. In other words, there's a connection between, it's not simply a vine. It's the vine on top of the peach tree. So he's got to give him a peach tree. Same thing over here. When he said, I'm renting you this apartment on top of this house, the house is meshubah to the apartment upstairs. If the apartment's unusable, you can use the house. Okay, so that's what Mishnah said. So it's only in that specific way. If he just said, I'm renting you this apartments go on, like we said, then the deal's off. If he said specifically, I'm renting you an apartment, so give him another apartment. He said an apartment. Nobody makes a lease like that today. I'll rent you an apartment. Maybe they do. Maybe a guy's got a lot of apartments. I just saw that in China they have 82 million empty apartments. It's renting you an apartment. They went through a building thing, and now the economy fell apart. And they interviewed there's a German businessman there, and he says, "How many apartments here?" He says, "The whole population of Germany today is 82 million. I can move all 82 million to these apartments." That's what he said. So, maybe there you have an apartment. Maybe that would work. Fine. But here he said, I'm renting you this apartment onto this house. Boy, Rav Abba Bar Mamla, he asked him this question. Shehu dar levado dar kamikara. When the upper person, the tenant now, was entitled to move downstairs, right? Because that's the deal. This apartment on top of this house. Odil mashneim dar. Maybe he could say they both live there. I didn't rent it. The lower guy, Reuben, could say, I didn't rent it to you on the condition that you're going to evict me. I did say yes. My house is obligated to your apartment. Okay, so if your apartment is not livable, you can move downstairs. But when you say move downstairs, does that mean you move downstairs alone, or the owner could say, I didn't want you to evict me. Where am I going to live now? On the condition or the knowledge that you're going to evict me, I didn't rent it to you. They're both going to live in there. And if they both live in there, I would think that the owner would feel more of the urgency to build the upstairs so you can get this guy out of there, right? When he uses it, how does the tenant now can use the apartment downstairs, right, the lower story? How does he enter it? Does he enter it through the main door? Let's say they each have one door, right? There's a door going to the lower story and side going up to the upper story. So when the tenant uses the lower story, does he have to use the stairs that were his stairs going through his door, and then somehow go downstairs from his apartment? Can he use the regular door? Or he has to come up through upstairs. That was his normal entrance. The other guy could say, listen, okay, you have to live here, but you're not using my front door. Mi Omar can mi kara. Then he said, just like before, Mami Kara Derch Gagan, just like you entered the whole building via upstairs. Hashnami derkag. And you also have to come in now for buy it upstairs. So Dilma, or can the tenant say, Aliyah Kibil, I agreed, for one set of stairs. Aliyah Virida Lo Kabila, I didn't agree that to go into my bed or to go into my kitchen, I got to go upstairs and then downstairs. I didn't agree to that. Intim Salom or Matzi Amalei, Aliyah Virida Lo Kabila. If the tenant can say, if you hold that the tenant can say, I don't want to go up and down, and they said, what about Aliyah? So what happens if there was a 3-story building? Reuben lived downstairs and he had 2 apartments on the 2nd and the 3rd floor, right? There were 2. If the upper one, let's say he rented him the upper, the 3rd story one, and that one fell through, that's fine. He could live in the 2nd story. If the Staftona, but let's say now the middle one, the 2nd story one fell through, the upper one's still intact. The Mislik Lagamre, or he takes out the word Lagamre. The Mislik Balyana, can he force him to go to the upper one? Miyamrina, can he force him to go? In other words, the owner lives in the 1st story, right? And he's got 2 stories on top of him. And he rented him the 2nd story. The 2nd story fell through. Now, the tenant doesn't want to go all the way up to the 3rd floor. He's got to go more steps. So what's the argument there? Can the owner force the tenant to go upstairs? Or can he say no? Entitled to use downstairs, just like if there's 2 stories. You accepted an upper story, you could accept it upon you. So if it's the 2nd story or the 3rd story, you still accepted that you're going to go upstairs. I'll go up 1 set of stairs. 1 story, I'll go up. I don't accept that upon myself. All these questions stand. I'm not really sure if the second, the first Intim Salomar on the 3rd line of the page, where they both are in the same line. Presumably, it's an Intim Salomar because if you say that they both have to live together, then it'll bother the downstairs, the owner, if he's using the same door or not. If you say that the tenant can evict the owner, then presumably he'd be able to use that door because the owner's not in there anyway, right? Because there's Intim. If you say they both live in the same house in the 1st story, then the question is, how does he have to enter it? Does the tenant enter via the same door or via the upstairs? If the owner can be evicted, then presumably he could use the downstairs. Either way, and maybe then the 3rd question falls away too, because if he can evict him, still the question is only if he rented the 3rd floor and the 3rd floor broke through, then he can certainly come down to the 2nd floor. He doesn't need that. But if you enter the 2nd floor, can you force the tenant to go to the 3rd floor? The person, I don't want to go up 2 stories. Or can he say, no, you can come downstairs and either evict him or not? The 3rd question maybe depends on the 2nd question, right? More or less, somewhat. But it doesn't so much depend on the 1st question. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow from the Yoshi Omer Atachna no sin as tikva. Have a good day, everybody.
So he rented the 2nd, 3rd story.
Both of them. He rented both of them.
Both of them, and the 3rd story broke.
Right.
So the guy on the 3rd story went into the guy on the 2nd floor.
Oh, he rented both of them out. Depends what the deal was. Depends what he said. Here we're only talking about whether 2 people. Depends it depends on the conditions of the lease.
Now we have all 3.
Right. So it depends. What were the terms of the condition? What were the conditions that he rented the 2nd and the 3rd floor out? You have to check what the conditions were.
Aren't both mentioning the same thing, saying that they're both saying rent whatever the conditions of the rental is?
I didn't hear it. Say it again.
All cases are very simple. It depends on the conditions of the rental.
That's right. All depends on the conditions of the rental. Exactly. Have a good day. Shavua tov. Good talk.